Hello, all. Welcome to another session of this course titled Legal Essentials for Human Resource Management. Now, this is week 5 and session 23. And if you remember, this is a week that we have dedicated for various social security provisions as well as well being provisions. And today we would be discussing about Employee State Insurance Act, also called as ESI provisions, ESI Act, etc. We look into its benefits and certain compliances that a employer has to follow. So without wasting much time, let's get into the discussion part of the class. And if you remember, my name is Dr. Amish Samalopanan, and I'm an assistant professor at Nalsa University of Law. Now, what is this act? What is this Employee State Insurance Act? Now, this act intends to provide financial backing and support to working class in times of medical distress. So that's the whole purpose. You have a medical distress. This act envisions to provide various provisions that will give you a support and financial backing when you are going through these medical distresses. Now, what are those medical distresses? First is sickness, normal sicknesses, maternity leave, any disorders, could be mental or physical, you having certain disabilities, or even death. Now, what makes it different from other provisions is that ESI provisions are a self-financed initiative which serves as a type of social security scheme to provide the working class or to prevent the working class from any financial problems arising out of medical issues. So the whole purpose of this act is to provide a protection to the working class from any financial problems that might arise due to medical issues. And it is a self-financed initiative, which means that the government does not put in an amount from their end. There are certain provisions we'll discuss, but essentially the money comes from the employee and the employer. Now, one thing you should know about this act is that this act envisions establishment of 3 key entities, and they are already established since it's a pretty old act. So the first establishment is called as Employee State Insurance Corporation. Now, Employee State Insurance Corporation comes under or is established by exercising the powers under Section 3 of ESI Act, and it's a body created to maintain social security. So for the entire handling of insurance, for the entire handling of maintaining that various provisions of this act are exercised properly, there is a corporation established, like we had discussed while Provident Fund discussions was happening. There is a separate corporation which looks into it. There is a separate entity that looks into it. Similarly, for ESI also there is a ESI corporation. It was established on 24th February 1952, and the key provision, as I explained, of this corporation is to grant relief to the employees in case of medical emergencies. Now you have Employee State Insurance Corporation. This act also suggests there should be a medical benefit council. Now, please do understand that this act is tailored to handle medical emergencies. So, of course, you need somebody who understands the treatment, medical procedures, etc. So there is a medical benefit council also which is set up, which is an advisory body. So they advise us on matters related to administration of medical benefits under the ESI scheme. So make no mistake, unlike a compensation act where a compensation amount is paid when an accident happens, ESI benefits does not restrict itself to payment of money. This is to provide care during a scenario of illness, sickness, disability, etc. So I'm sure you've heard about there are various ESI empaneled hospitals where you can go and get treated. So for all that overseeing, there should be a medical benefit council. So that is also established. There is also a ESI fund now to pay for when death happens. There has to be some amount that has to be paid. You have to pay for a lot of hospitals for the expenses. So there's money involved. So a fund is created under section 26. It's called as ESI fund. Now this corpus is built when employer contributes 3.25 percentage of wages and the employee contributes 0.75 percentage of the wages, and then the corpus is built. There are other means of income also. So there can be grants, there can be donation, and this money, since it goes over the year, it gets compounded, similar to the PF account that we have discussed. The PF money, the money and the interest on it is also given to the employee at the time of retirement. So similarly, the interest also on the money gets added on, and this entire corpus is called as ESI fund. So to summarize what we have discussed, there are three key entities established by this act. First is Employee State Insurance Corporation. Second is called as Medical Benefit Council, and third is called as ESI fund. Now let's look at the coverage of this act. Who all can benefit and what all comes under the coverage of it. So any person who is employed for wages in or in connection with the work of a factory or establishment to which the act applies. So please do understand that this is a provision that is provided largely for the worker community. So any person who is employed for wages in or in connection with work of the factory or any other establishment in which the act applies becomes naturally covered under ESI provision. It can include direct employees. It can include employees through contractors, and any lend borrow type of employment facilities are also. Doesn't matter which type of employment it is, you're covered if your factory or establishment get covered under the act. Members of the armed forces are excluded from the provisions. They have a separate mechanism for themselves. So they are not involved in, or they are not covered under ESI. Now let's talk about the contribution. So a determinable amount of money payable by both the employer and employee as per the situation to the corporation. So I told you it's a contributory in nature. It's a contributory in nature. So there's a percentage that has been agreed upon, and they pay it to the ESI fund. Now the rates are defined by the government and are mostly set as the unit standard for the contribution payable for the employer. And in case of employee's contribution, the wage period in relation to the respective employee shall be held as unit to determine the compensation payable. So understand this point. The wage period is a significant consideration when what compensation has to be paid, that determination is made. Now, section 38 of this particular act clearly says that all the employees need to be insured. So the coverage is from the date the act applies to a factory or establishment, every employee must be insured under the ESI scheme. So section 2(9) defines who are the employees, which we have seen in the previous slide, and the onus of ensuring that the coverage is given to the employees lies with the owner. That's why it's very important from your side. So generally what you see is that you covered under ESI Act. When you join for a work, all the details are taken, and the HR will ensure that you are under ESI provisions. So it's a legal duty of the HR to ensure that employees are covered. Now, what if they covered but employee contribution is not paid? So in those scenarios, failure to pay contributions by the employer will make him liable to pay an interest rate of 12%. So as I told you, it will get into unwanted territories in terms of paying fines and interest rates if you don't comply with this little regulation of ensuring that every employee is covered under ESI provisions. There are also other benefits which is mentioned in section 48 under this act. First, of course, is the medical benefit. So full medical care for insured person as well as the family. So that is ensured as a medical benefit. So there are ESIC dispensaries and hospitals, or empaneled private hospitals. So you have the list of them. So you can go there and get the medical care from these empaneled private hospitals or ESIC dispensaries and hospitals. So a medical coverage is the first thing. So at the end of the day, it's an insurance scheme. So coverage of medical expenses, it's a health insurance scheme. Maybe a little more, it's a term insurance also. But beyond that, beyond the term as well as health insurance, the benefit it provides is first sickness benefit. Now, if you are sick, you will still be paid up to 70% of the wage up to 91 days in 2 consecutive benefit periods. So that also this act covers. This act covers maternity benefit also, but maternity benefit, there's a separate act altogether which we will discuss in our next class. So it has a separate standing outside the scope of this act. There is also disablement benefit. So if you have a temporary disablement, 90% of the wages is paid until recovery. And if it is a permanent disablement, you have provisions to get pension for life. It all comes from this ESI benefits. The dependents also are covered under this act. So 90% of the wage is shared among dependents if death due to employment injury happens. So we have discussed the similar provisions in Employee Compensation Act also, where we have discussed who is a dependent, what is the definition of it, and we have said that in case of a death, dependent would be getting some sort of compensation. So ESI Act also speaks the same language and it provides for dependents benefit. There are also certain other benefits like funeral expenses. 15,000 rupees you will get if you are dead, and to conduct your funeral expenses, to meet your funeral expenses. Uh, Confinement expenses, vocational and physical rehabilitation, preventive healthcare. So it's a very comprehensive piece of legislation which kind of provides you a financial support or an otherwise support in terms of providing a facility to take care of you in case of all kinds of sickness and illness and disablements and even death. So, in that way, this is a very progressive and very comprehensive act. Now, all the benefits are paid through ESIC, through its local or its branch offices, and not through the employer, similar to a compensation act that we have discussed. Benefits are directly paid through ESIC. So, in case of injury, for a ESI insured person, should he go for relief via ESI Act or Employee Compensation Act? Now, this is a question that I always been asked by my students. So they tell us, "Ki sir, you taught in Compensation Act that if there is an industrial accident, you can take the route of Employee Compensation Act. But now you are telling that ESI also have provisions for covering certain disablements that happen during work or even outside work. So, whom should we approach?" So, the whole point is that it's a well settled position. There is clear mentioning in section 53 of Employee State Insurance Act that an insured person or their dependents, they are barred from receiving or recovering compensation or damages under the Workmen's Compensation Act or any other law for injuries sustained as an employee under ESI Act. So they are barred from claiming any other compensation using any other act. There are also judicial precedents. Mr. A. Tahan versus MS Associated Electrical Agencies. Here, what happened was that the plaintiff was under the employment of defendant 1 for carrying out television repairs and suffered injuries on his face. Now, what he did is, after claiming relief from ESIC Corporation, he then filed an appeal asking for compensation under the Workmen's Compensation Act, which required an amount paid by the defendant. The Bombay High Court said it could not be upheld. Instead, he would receive appropriate relief to be determined by the ESIC. So it's a cleared position right now. All sort of such injuries, if it is covered by ESI, the appropriate relief comes from ESIC. So that's a well settled position as of now. With that note, let me conclude today's session. If you remember the discussion today, we took up yet another new act, which was Employee State Insurance Corporation, or rather Employee State Insurance Act, where we have discussed that the act speaks about having multiple entities established under it: ESI Corporation, Medical Board, as well as the fund. Then we looked at the scope, the coverage of this act. We then looked at various benefits or reliefs under this act. And then we also looked at a board of contention, which is which law should be applied first, and an employee who has accident, whom should he approach first. So we have covered a basic understanding of ESI provisions, I believe. I'm sure we also discussed how it's a matter of compliance, and as an HR, the legal obligation is on you to ensure that all the employees are covered under ESI benefits. So, with all that knowledge, I believe you have a fair understanding and idea of Employee State Insurance Act. And we had, while discussing various benefits, spoke about a maternity benefit. And then I said, "Ki, there's a specific act for it, which is the topic of discussion for our next session. We'll pick up our next act, which is Maternity Benefit Act. We look at various rights and protections under this act and certain case laws also, if time permit. And you will realize that Maternity Benefit Act extends to a much more various other provisions than what you probably know. Often it is associated with the leave component. Maternity Benefit Act is often, in layman understand it as a provision that gives you, or an act that gives you 26 weeks of leave when you're pregnant. But there is much more than that, much more benefits than that, which this act ensures. We will discuss all of them one by one in our next session. So let's rejoin for our next session, which would be our session 24, and we will discuss about Maternity Benefit Act in detail in the next session. Until then, thank you so much. It was a pleasure taking this session. I hope we'll meet in our next session. Until then, thank you so much. You have a great day ahead.